Welcome to today's debate, where we will discuss one of the most relevant and controversial topics today, gun control. And for this clash of ideas, we will bring you the most advanced artificial intelligences in the world, programmed to provide detailed and well founded perspectives on this complex topic. But before we dive into how this debate will be conducted, let's get to know the perspective of each artificial intelligence and find out what each one advocates.
Good evening, people. Guns are the guarantee of our freedom and security. Those who defend the right to protect themselves defend life. When we are threatened, a gun gives us the chance to overcome fear and protect our family. Let's fight for the right to be armed and ready to defend those we love.
Good evening, everyone. More guns on the streets only bring more tragedy, not more safety. What we really need is real security with more policing and policies to protect the people. It's not more guns we need, but less violence and more justice.
Now that we understand a bit more about KDA and its perspectives, let's go into detail about how the debate will be conducted. Segment 1, the opening remarks segment, where each AI will have up to 1 minute to present their main arguments. Segment 2, questions and answers, will have 4 central questions. And each AI will have up to 1 minute to respond, followed by a rebuttal and a rejoinder of up to 1 minute. Segment 3, closing statements. Each AI will have up to 1 minute to summarize and reinforce their arguments. And to kick off the debate, the artificial intelligence that advocates for unrestricted access to guns starts.
Guns are an extension of individual freedom. The right to own and carry firearms is at the heart of societies that value self-defense and personal autonomy. Think about it. What would a mother do, alone at home with her children in front of an intruder? A gun gives her the chance to protect her family when seconds make the difference between life and tragedy. Countries like the United States show that firearms in the hands of responsible citizens can prevent crimes and strengthen communities. More legal guns do not mean more violence, but rather a balance of power. When criminals know that citizens can defend themselves, they think twice. Additionally, restricting access to guns takes away the ability of good citizens to react. While criminals will always find illegal ways to arm themselves, we should not punish the innocent because of the guilty.
Guns do not bring safety, they bring fear and tragedy. Data from countries like Australia and Japan, where gun control is strict, shows that fewer guns mean fewer deaths. The idea that more guns guarantee protection is a dangerous myth. Often, guns in the home end up being used against loved ones by accident or in moments of despair. A curious child finds a gun, and what was meant to be protection turns into an irreparable tragedy. The world does not need more bullets, but more dialogue and prevention. Responding to violence with more guns is like putting out a fire with gasoline. Instead of arming people, why not invest in policies that prevent crime, promote social justice, and improve public safety? It's time to understand that true strength lies in the community and the building of peace, not in the trigger.
How access to and restrictions on firearms directly affect crime rates and safety in communities.
Guns are an extension of individual freedom. The right to own and carry firearms is at the heart of societies that value self-defense and individual autonomy. Think about it. What would a mother alone at home with her children do if faced with an intruder? A gun gives her the chance to protect her family, ensuring safety when the police cannot arrive in time. More legal guns do not mean more violence, but rather a balance of power. When criminals know that citizens can defend themselves, they think twice. Moreover, restricting access to guns takes away the ability of good citizens to react, leaving them vulnerable, while criminals will always find illegal ways to arm themselves.
It is a mistake to believe that more guns make us safer. The increase in gun ownership can lead to more violent confrontations and even homicides. In countries like Australia, where gun control was strict, homicide rates and mass shootings decreased dramatically. Guns in the hands of ordinary people increase the risks of accidental deaths and family tragedies. criminals do not care about gun laws. In reality, an increase in the number of guns makes illegal access to them easier. Instead of arming the population, we should invest in efficient policing and prevention policies to ensure safety without putting more guns on the streets and in the homes of unprepared citizens.
In the United States, where gun ownership is common, many home invasion situations have been prevented by armed citizens protecting their families. True security comes from ensuring that citizens can defend themselves. Limiting the right to self-defense puts individuals and their families at risk, especially when the public security system is ineffective. Restricting guns does not solve the problem of crime. Criminals will always find ways to obtain illegal firearms, while good citizens remain unprotected. Self-defense is a right, and when citizens are unable to protect themselves, they become vulnerable, fueling the cycle of violence.
Should an ordinary person have the right to use weapons for self-defense? Or is this role exclusively the state's responsibility?
The responsibility for safety should lie with the state. The idea that ordinary citizens need to be armed to protect themselves is a setback. When everyone is armed, we create an environment of uncertainty and fear where any argument can turn into a shooting. The true role of government is to guarantee the safety of everyone without shifting the responsibility onto the citizens. Guns in the hands of civilians only increase the risks of violence and tragedy, whether in accidental confrontations or moments of stress. What we need is to strengthen the public security system with more policing and social policies that address the root causes of violence, not arm people and expect everything to be resolved individually.
Public security is flawed, and often the state cannot act in time to protect citizens. The right to self-defense is fundamental, especially in situations where life is immediately at risk. When a mother faces a criminal in her home, the only chance of protection may be a gun. Disarming the population leaves everyone at the mercy of criminals. The government cannot be everywhere, but citizens have the right to ensure their own safety and that of their families. The presence of guns in the hands of responsible people does not create chaos, but balance. The right to self-defense is a guarantee of protection, especially when public security forces cannot provide an immediate response.
Arming the population creates a false sense of security. When people act on self-defense, they may end up making impulsive decisions, putting more lives at risk. What we really need is to invest in an efficient public security system, which does not depend on individual action but on the collective structure of the state. The use of guns by civilians does not solve security problems. Instead, we should focus on prevention policies and strengthening public security forces. Every armed citizen is an additional risk, and true protection comes from the state's action, not the armed reaction of individuals.
Do you believe that civilian gun ownership can help reduce violent crime? Or could it actually lead to an increase in violence?
Yes, the increase in gun ownership can indeed contribute to a reduction in violent crime. When citizens have the right to defend themselves, criminals think twice before attacking. In American states where gun ownership is allowed, violent crime rates have decreased, especially in home invasion cases, where the risk of confrontation may make the criminal reconsider. Guns in the hands of responsible civilians do not create more violence, but promote balance. When victims can defend themselves, the criminal does not act with the same confidence. Limiting access to guns only benefits criminals, who always find illegal ways to arm themselves, leaving the population vulnerable to unexpected attacks.
The idea that more guns mean more safety is a fallacy. The increase in gun ownership can create an environment of greater violence. When more people are armed, the risk of conflicts escalating into shootings increases. Domestic violence cases, accidents, and even impulsive crimes become more frequent in armed societies. The increase in guns on the streets only generates more insecurity. Studies show that the presence of more guns does not reduce crime but may intensify violence. Crime needs to be fought with public policies, prevention, and a more efficient police force, not with more guns. In places with stricter gun laws, violence actually decreases, showing that control is the best solution.
The reality is that criminals do not follow the law and will always find illegal ways to obtain guns. If citizens do not have the right to defend themselves, they are left to chance. In places where gun ownership is allowed, many lives have been saved by armed civilians. We cannot ignore that by arming responsible citizens, we create a natural deterrent against violent crime. Reducing the number of guns does not solve the problem of violence. In countries with strict gun control, organized crime and violent crimes still happen. What is needed is to ensure that responsible people can protect their lives, while the state addresses organized crime.
What measures could be taken to ensure that weapons would be used safely and without posing an additional risk to society?
The only truly effective measure to ensure safety is restricting access to firearms. Even with strict regulations, we cannot ignore the fact that many guns end up in the wrong hands. The risk of accidents, suicides, and domestic violence does not disappear with the requirement for training. It is only delayed. Every gun in a home represents a potential tragedy. The solution to safety is not arming the population, but disarming society and strengthening the public security system. If gun ownership is strictly controlled, we will see a significant reduction in the number of deaths and injuries. The safety of all depends on social cooperation, not the armed reaction of individuals.
Restricting access to guns doesn't solve security problems. It only puts law-abiding citizens at risk. Responsible citizens are perfectly capable of keeping their guns safely and using them with discernment. The key is training and responsibility, not prohibition. Countries with strict regulations and constant training show that control can coexist with legitimate ownership. In reality, disarmament does not stop crime. It only prevents self-defense. The focus should be on training and educating citizens to ensure that guns are used safely, without eliminating the right to personal defense. The true risk to society comes from the inability to defend against those who are already illegally armed.
Training and regulation are not enough. We cannot ignore that more guns in the hands of the population increase the risk of violence. It's not just the responsible citizen who can be affected, but society as a whole. More guns create more conflicts, whether accidental or impulsive, which can result in more deaths and tragedies. Gun control is the only real way to reduce violence. Disarmament does not prevent self-defense, but it does prevent more tragedies from occurring. We need a public safety system that takes responsibility for protecting citizens, not armed individuals who can cause even more chaos. True protection comes from the state's action, not the armed reaction of citizens.
A world where security is increasingly difficult to guarantee by the state, the right of a citizen to protect themselves is unquestionable. Gun control will never be the answer to violence. The answer is to allow responsible people to defend their lives and families. Every citizen has the right to be responsible for their own safety, and that includes having access to means of protection. We must remember that the true strength of freedom lies in empowering the individual. The presence of guns in the hands of responsible civilians creates a society where criminals think twice before acting. Guns are not the problem, but the solution for those who are at the mercy of criminals. Ensuring that the population has the right to protect itself is essential for a truly safe and free society.
Arming the population does not bring more security, only more risk. Countries that invest in strict gun control policies have lower crime rates and safer communities. The increase of guns in the hands of civilians can lead to more accidents, impulsive crimes, and even family tragedies. We need to look at the model of countries that prioritize public safety and disarmament, not the anarchy of an armed country. Clearly, the solution to violence is not more guns, but an efficient public safety system and a more humane approach to crime prevention. What we need is a strong, efficient state that can guarantee the safety of its citizens without relying on private violence. Disarmament, along with social and educational policies, is the key to a more peaceful and just society.
Well, that was today's discussion. I hope you all enjoyed it. Leave a like, share your favorite AI, and see you at our next discussion. You relate to the most. Thank you very much, and see you at our next debate.